After years with Princess Charlotte, the royal nanny quit, but her farewell letter left the palace in tears. When Princess Charlotte was born in 2015, people around the world celebrated the arrival of Prince William and Kate Middleton's second child. Outside St. Mary's Hospital in London, excited crowds gathered, and news headlines called it a historic moment. The birth of a new royal, especially a girl who was now fourth in line to the throne, was big news. But while all the attention was focused on the hospital steps and royal announcements, something more personal was beginning behind closed palace doors. Away from excited crowds and news headlines, a quiet and important part of Charlotte's early life was starting to form. It's a side of her story the public rarely hears about. Let's take a closer look. Stay with us. What you're about to discover might surprise you. This was the beginning of a strong bond between the newborn princess and the woman who would help raise her every day, her nanny. More than just a caregiver, the nanny became someone Charlotte would grow to trust, rely on, and feel safe with, playing a big role in her childhood just like her parents. Though the public rarely saw this relationship, it became one of the most steady and caring parts of her young royal life. Maria Teresa Turillon. Barallo had been working for the royal family even before Charlotte was born. A highly trained graduate of the prestigious Norland College, she had already looked after Prince George during his earliest years. But when Charlotte arrived, Maria's role changed. Suddenly, she wasn't just looking after a toddler prince, she was helping to guide a newborn princess into the world. Those early months were difficult for Kate, who often spoke of the challenges of motherhood. Maria became the support in the household, ensuring that every detail was taken care of, from Charlotte's feeding routines to managing George's bursts of toddler energy. During those first sleepless nights, Maria became someone Charlotte got used to, always there to comfort her when she cried. By the time Charlotte was old enough to walk around the palace, Maria had become her constant companion. While William and Kate were often busy with royal duties, Maria worked hard to keep things normal for the young royals. She believed in being firm but kind. She taught Charlotte how to use a spoon, how to politely greet staff, and later, how to ride her first bike. Charlotte loved her nanny. She was always close to her parents, but Maria was there when they had to be away. Palace staff would sometimes joke that Charlotte listened to Maria even more than to her parents. But there's something about young Princess Charlotte that sets her apart. As Charlotte grew, her bond with Maria only deepened. Unlike Prince George, who often seemed more independent at an early age, Charlotte liked company. She followed Maria around the nursery, asked endless questions about the world, and insisted Maria sit beside her during story time. Bedtime became their most sacred ritual. Even when Kate was free, Charlotte would sometimes whisper, "I want Maria to tuck me in." It wasn't just inside the palace that Maria's influence showed. When Charlotte made her first public appearance on the balcony of Buckingham Palace for Trooping the Colour in 2016, people noticed her confident wave to the crowd. "Like this, darling," Maria said, lifting Charlotte's hand. "Wave like a queen." That quiet confidence had been built through those little games behind closed doors, helping Charlotte feel calm in front of thousands of people. The years that followed brought more milestones. Maria was there when Charlotte started nursery school, helping her into her uniform. The years that followed brought more important moments. Maria was there when Charlotte started nursery school, helping her into her uniform on that nervous first morning. She was there when the young princess joined her brothers in public engagements, reminding her to smile and stand tall. Every time Charlotte looked over her shoulder, Maria was nearby. But Maria wasn't just a professional. She became part of the family. At Christmas, she joined the royals for quiet dinners. On birthdays, she baked cakes with Charlotte, letting the little girl lick the spoon. On rainy days, she invented treasure hunts inside the palace corridors. And when William and Kate traveled abroad, Maria was the steady presence who reassured Charlotte that her parents would always return. Charlotte often called her "My Maria," a sweet phrase that melted the hearts of anyone who heard it. For a young princess living in the spotlight, having someone who felt like she truly belonged to her someone not tied to royal titles. Things weren't always easy, though. Maria was firm about some things, especially good manners. If Charlotte forgot to say thank you or slouched at the table, Maria corrected her right away. "Back straight, darling. Princesses sit tall," Maria would remind her gently. At first, Charlotte would pout or fold her arms, but over time, she came to understand and respect the rules. Maria wasn't being mean. She was helping her learn how to act with grace, something Charlotte would need as she grew into her royal role. As Charlotte got older, her personality really began to shine. While people often noticed her cheeky smiles and playful spirit in public, she was also very thoughtful in private. Maria helped that part of her grow too. She encouraged Charlotte to draw, write little notes for her parents, and take care of her pets. "Mummy will love this drawing," Maria would say, holding up one of Charlotte's sketches. When the family got their black Cocker Spaniel, Orla, Maria made sure Charlotte helped feed and walk her, teaching her to be responsible. By the time Charlotte turned 8, she had grown into a confident and curious girl. Many people noticed how mature she seemed for her age. A big part of that was because of Maria's steady and caring support. While William and Kate gave Charlotte a strong home and loving guidance, it was Maria who was there for the small daily things, singing soft songs at bedtime and whispering comfort during loud, stormy nights. "Will you stay with me until the thunder goes away?" Charlotte once asked, clutching her blanket. "Always, darling," Maria whispered, stroking her hair. People in the palace started to quietly wonder how much longer Maria would stay. 8 years is a long time for any nanny, especially in a busy and high-pressure place like the royal household. But Maria didn't talk about leaving. Her attention was still fully on Charlotte. "You're growing up so fast," Maria said one afternoon, watching Charlotte read aloud with ease. Charlotte giggled and replied, "I want to be just like Mummy." As long as Charlotte needed her, she stayed close. Still, some changes were happening. Charlotte was getting older and more independent. She didn't need as much help as before. She was focusing more on school, enjoying sports, and spending more time playing with her brothers. Maria felt proud to see her growing and learning. But deep down, she also knew that her role in Charlotte's life was starting to change. Thinking about stepping back was hard for Maria. Charlotte wasn't just someone she cared for. She felt like family. Maria had been there from the very beginning, holding her as a newborn and watching her turn into a smart, funny young girl. The idea of not being there for every new step or not being the first person Charlotte ran to when she was sad made her heart feel heavy. And though Charlotte didn't realize it yet, changes were coming. Maria had given a decade of her life to the family, and the palace had begun to make preparations for the day she would step back. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was one that would eventually have to be made. What no one expected was how emotional that moment would be, or how deeply it would affect Princess Charlotte. Let's find out how it all unfolded. By the time Charlotte turned 9, things were starting to change around the palace. The little girl who once held tightly to Maria's hand was now running ahead on her own.
Say hello. Hi. That looks delicious. What happened to this one on the floor?
Eager to do things herself, she could ride her pony without help, pick out her own books to read, and even joke with George when she beat him in games. To people outside the palace, these were normal signs of growing up, but inside, Maria noticed that her role in Charlotte's life was starting to change. It wasn't that Charlotte didn't need her anymore. She just needed her in different ways. She didn't ask Maria to tuck her in every night, but still liked when Maria sat on her bed and listened to her talk about her day. One night, Charlotte said with a sleepy smile, "You don't have to stay if you're tired." Maria smiled and replied gently. Charlotte didn't reach for Maria's hand in public anymore, but she still leaned in to whisper questions during royal events. The closeness was still there. Maria was proud of the young girl Charlotte was becoming, but she couldn't help feeling like her time was slowly coming to an end. William and Kate saw it too. She wasn't just a nanny, she was part of their home and someone they fully trusted. But they also knew the job hadn't been easy. Working for the royal family meant long hours and always being careful. It was a lot to handle. One day, Kate sat with Maria and asked kindly, "Have you thought about what you'd like to do next?" Maria looked thoughtful and answered, "I think about it sometimes, but it's hard to picture a day without her." As Charlotte grew more independent, they all knew that changes were coming, not just for her, but for Maria too. For Maria, thinking about leaving was hard to say out loud. She had spent almost every single day with Charlotte since she was a baby. Walking away didn't feel possible. Still, in quiet moments when she was alone, she admitted to herself that she felt tired. She had given the royal family her best years. Maybe it was time to rest, to step back, and let Charlotte grow without her always being there. Charlotte didn't know anything about what Maria was feeling. To her, Maria was still the person who made boring lessons fun, who always packed her school bag perfectly, and who could braid her hair just the way she liked it. Charlotte thought Maria would always be there. One afternoon, while brushing her hair, she asked, "Will you still be with me when I'm a teenager?" Maria paused for a moment, then said softly, "I'll always be with you in one way or another." But slowly, small changes began to happen. Maria started letting Charlotte do more by herself. Instead of planning her whole day, she let Charlotte take up little tasks. Charlotte thought Maria was just helping her grow up, but really, Maria was gently preparing her for a future without her. Others in the palace also started to notice a difference. Maria, who was always involved in everything, began giving small tasks to other staff. She didn't watch over the children as closely as before. When one of the helpers asked, "Everything okay, Maria?" she smiled and replied, "Yes, all is fine." But her eyes showed a kind of sadness that hadn't been there before. Kate noticed it most clearly, and what happened next was unexpected. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, she walked past Charlotte's room and saw Maria quietly tidying up. That wasn't strange. Maria often did that, but something felt different. Maria took her time, slowly touching Charlotte's drawings on the wall, straightening the pile of books by the bed, and gently fixing the dolls sitting in a row. It didn't feel like regular cleaning. It felt like someone trying to remember every little thing. Kate didn't say anything, but she knew Maria had something on her mind. The idea that Maria might leave one day made Kate feel uneasy. She had always known it would happen someday, but the thought still hurt. Maria had been a strong, steady part of their family through everything, during royal tours, when Kate was pregnant, and during the many moments the children were in the public eye. She wasn't just the nanny. She had become part of their private world, someone they could count on. For William, the idea was just as hard. He had grown up with nannies too. He still remembered how sad it felt when they left. He didn't want Charlotte to feel that same kind of hurt, but he also knew there was no way to avoid it completely. "We'll have to talk to her gently," he said one night as he and Kate sat together. "She needs to understand that even if Maria steps back, the love won't go anywhere." Kate nodded, then said softly, "She's going to miss her terribly. We all will." The only question left was when and how to tell Charlotte. That summer the family spent time at Anmer Hall, their countryside retreat. It was meant to be a relaxing break, but for Maria, it felt bittersweet. She took long walks with Charlotte through the fields, teaching her how to spot different flowers and birds. They baked together, painted together, and even had one of their famous midnight feasts, sneaking downstairs for biscuits and hot chocolate after everyone else was asleep. Charlotte thought it was the best holiday ever, but for Maria, each moment felt like it carried extra weight, like she was holding on to something she wouldn't always have. The turning point came one afternoon in the garden. Charlotte was threading daisies into a bracelet when she looked up and asked, "Maria, do you think things will always stay like this? Just us? Like it's always been?" Maria smiled gently and said, "Things change, my darling, but love doesn't." It became clear to her then that she couldn't delay the decision much longer. For Charlotte's sake, and for her own, she would have to make the choice official. By the time the family returned to London, the matter was quietly discussed between Maria and the Duke and Duchess. It was agreed that the transition would be handled gently, with great care for Charlotte's feelings. Maria would step back gradually, ensuring Charlotte never felt abandoned. But even with that plan, the thought of telling Charlotte was daunting. The girl who had always introduced Maria proudly as "my nanny" was not going to take the news easily. Autumn came, and with it, the reality of change. Maria began speaking more openly with William and Kate about her departure. The palace started discreetly preparing for her absence. And still, Charlotte remained unaware of how much her world was about to change. Not even anyone had expected how hard saying goodbye would be. Stay tuned, because we're about to reveal Maria's letter that changed everything. Maria knew that saying goodbye face-to-face would break her. She could manage discipline, she could manage schedules, she could manage the chaos of raising royal children, but she couldn't manage watching Charlotte's heart shatter as she explained why she had to leave. And so, late one evening, when the children were asleep and the palace was quiet, she sat down at her small writing desk and began to write. The letter was not long, but every word carried the weight of a decade. She wrote to Charlotte first, in language simple enough for a young girl to understand. She reminded her of all the moments they had shared, the stories before bedtime, the secret midnight feasts, the garden walks, where Charlotte had asked endless questions. She told her how proud she was of her curiosity, her kindness, and her courage. And then, gently, she explained that it was time for her to step back, not because she loved her any less, but because she had given all she could in that role. "I will always be your Maria," she wrote, "even if I am not here every day." Then, in the same letter, she wrote to William and Kate. She thanked them for trusting her with their children, for making her feel at home, and for giving her 10 years filled with meaning. She said she had done her best, even though she sometimes wished she could have done more. She ended with a line that people in the palace would remember for a long time. "You didn't just give me a job, you gave me a family." When the letter was found on the breakfast table the next morning, silence fell across the room. William read it first, his face tightening as he passed it to Kate. Kate, usually so composed, blinked hard against tears as she reached the part addressed to Charlotte. Neither of them spoke for several moments. The weight of Maria's words lingered like a heavy presence in the air. Later that day, they sat with Charlotte to explain. William held the letter in his hand, but Kate was the one who spoke. She told Charlotte that Maria loved her dearly, but that sometimes even people we love very much have to take different paths. At first, Charlotte didn't understand. She frowned, waiting for someone to laugh and tell her it was all a joke. But when Kate read aloud Maria's words, "I will always be your Maria, even if I am not here every day," the reality began to sink in. Charlotte cried, not the loud, angry sobs of a little child, but the quiet, sad tears of someone who felt like she was losing something very special. She looked at her mum with wide, teary eyes and asked, "Did I do something wrong? Does Maria not want to stay with me anymore?" Kate gently pulled her close and said, "No, my darling. Maria loves you very much. She always will." But even those kind words couldn't take away all the sadness. When Charlotte felt a bit calmer, William gave her the letter. She held it carefully, like it was a treasure, and read it slowly. Her lips moved as she whispered the words, reading each line with care. When she reached the end, she folded the paper and pressed it against her chest. "I don't want to forget," she said quietly, tears still in her eyes. The next few days felt different. Maria stayed a little longer to help the family adjust. She still took Charlotte to school, still brushed her hair just the way she liked, and still told bedtime stories. But now, every little moment felt special, like the last time they might do it together. People working in the palace felt the change too. Many of them had known Maria for years and had seen how much love and effort she gave the children. One helper said softly to another, "It won't be the same without her." Even staff, who had seen many nannies come and go, agreed. Maria leaving was something that touched everyone. On Maria's last evening, the family came together. There was no big farewell, just the sitting room at Kensington Palace, full of memories. Charlotte sat close to Maria, holding her hand tightly and not letting go. George tried to stay strong, but his quietness showed his feelings. Little Louis didn't fully understand, but he climbed into Maria's lap, feeling the sadness in the room. Kate gave Maria a special gift, a framed photo taken years ago at Amer Hall.
It's so weird when they get bigger to think that they were that tiny.
In the picture, Maria was sitting on the grass with all 3 children around her. Charlotte was laughing, George held a toy sword, and baby Louis was in her arms. On the frame, it said, "Forever part of our family." That was when Maria couldn't hold back her tears anymore. For the first time during her years with the family, she cried in front of them. She hugged each child tightly and whispered special words meant just for them. To Charlotte, she said, "You're stronger than you think. I'll always be with you in your heart." That night, after Maria left, the palace felt very quiet. Charlotte put Maria's letter under her pillow, not wanting it far from her. She whispered, "Good night," to it, as if Maria could still hear her. In the weeks after, she took the letter everywhere, with her school books in her bag, even in her coat pocket during public events. It wasn't just a letter. It was proof that the love between them was real and would never go away. Time passed, and Charlotte slowly adjusted. She became more independent, leaning on her parents and growing more confident. But Maria's lessons stayed with her. When Charlotte sat tall at events, spoke kindly to others, or wrote thank you notes, it was because of Maria. The palace never shared the full story of Maria's goodbye. To the public, everything seemed normal, but inside the palace, her absence was deeply felt. Maria wasn't just the nanny. She had been like a second mother, a teacher, and a true friend. Some royal insiders believe Maria stayed too long, which is why Princess Charlotte grew so attached to her. Do you agree? Share your opinions with us in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen, and you will enjoy it.